Theorem 24, Digital Root and Quranic Knowledge, ILM statement. The digital roots of verses that promote or discuss knowledge, learning, or the act of seeking understanding, ILM, might show patterns that emphasize the Quran's value on education, wisdom, and intellectual pursuit. Proof from Axioms 1 and 2. Each verse has a unique number and a digital root. Identifying knowledge verses. Step 1. Gather verses that explicitly address knowledge, learning, or the encouragement of seeking wisdom. Include verses where knowledge is exalted, scholars are praised, or where there's a call to reflect or learn. Digital root calculation. Step 2. Compute the digital roots for these knowledge-centric verses. Note which digital roots are more frequent or significant in these contexts. Pattern. Recognition. Step 3. Look for patterns. Does digital root 3, sometimes linked to knowledge in mystical interpretations or as a foundation of faith, appear more in verses about learning? Might digital root 7, perfection, divine knowledge, be linked to verses where divine wisdom or the perfection of knowledge is discussed? Thematic depth. Step 4. Assess the emphasis on knowledge. Are verses with specific digital roots particularly insightful or profound in their teachings about knowledge? Structural placement. Step 5. Examine the placement of these verses. Do knowledge verses with particular digital roots appear at key points, like at the beginning of surahs to set a tone of inquiry, or at the end to conclude with a call to wisdom? Symbolic and numerological significance. Step 6. Consider symbolic meanings. In Islamic tradition, numbers might symbolize aspects of knowledge. Check if these symbols align with the digital roots of knowledge verses. Interconnectivity. Step 7. Investigate connections among these verses. Do verses with similar digital roots link together in themes of knowledge, suggesting a network of intellectual pursuit throughout the Quran? Revelational context. Step 8. Reflect on the historical context of revelation. Were these verses revealed during times when knowledge was at the forefront, perhaps in response to ignorance or to establish the importance of learning in the early Muslim community? Statistical analysis. Step 9. Use statistical methods. Look for significant associations between digital roots and themes of knowledge or intellectual growth. Scholastic validation. Step 10. Consult with scholars specializing in Islamic education, philosophy, or theology. Discuss findings to see if traditional interpretations acknowledge any numeric significance in discussions of ILM, or if this numeric approach adds depth to understanding knowledge in Islam. Conclusion. If digital roots consistently correlate with themes of knowledge in a significant way, this theorem would be supported. Justification. Knowledge is highly valued in Islam, and if there's a numeric pattern in how the Quran promotes learning, it could reflect an intentional structuring to emphasize the pursuit of wisdom as a path to understanding divine messages. Limitations and considerations. Depth of knowledge. The Quran's approach to knowledge is holistic, involving moral, spiritual, and scientific dimensions. Numeric patterns should not detract from this richness. Cultural sensitivity. The reverence for knowledge and scholars in Islam must be upheld, ensuring that any numeric analysis enhances rather than simplifies the concept of ILM. Speculative interpretation. Traditional scholarship might view this approach as speculative, focusing more on the content, implications, and application of knowledge rather than on numerology. This theorem explores whether the Quran's discourse on knowledge might have an underlying numerical structure, potentially offering new insights into how the text encourages learning and scholarship while ensuring it complements traditional Islamic teachings on ILM. Your exploration into Theorem 24, Digital Root and Quranic Knowledge, ILM, presents an intriguing intersection between numerology and Islamic scholarship. Here's a breakdown of how this theorem might be approached. Analysis of the proof. Axioms and initial steps. You've established a starting point by acknowledging each verse's unique number and digital root, which is fundamental for your analysis. Identifying knowledge verses. You've correctly outlined a method for pinpointing verses related to knowledge. However, the selection criteria might benefit from a more detailed definition to ensure consistency and inclusivity across various interpretations of knowledge in the Quran. Digital root calculation. The computational aspect here is straightforward, but would require actual data analysis to draw conclusions. Each verse's digital root would need to be calculated, and then patterns or frequencies could be observed. Pattern recognition. Your steps here are speculative but insightful, suggesting a potential link between certain digital roots and themes of knowledge. The interpretation of digital roots, like 3 for knowledge or 7 for divine wisdom, would need substantiation from Islamic numerological traditions or scholarly consensus. Thematic depth, structural placement, symbolic significance. These steps delve deeper into the context and structure of the Quran, looking for correlations not just in content, but in placement and symbolic value. This could be particularly fruitful, but requires careful scrutiny to avoid overinterpretation. Interconnectivity. Revelational context. Examining how verses connect thematically through their digital roots. And considering the historical context of revelation adds layers to the analysis. Acknowledging the Quran's dynamic interaction with the society of its time. Statistical analysis. Scholastic validation. These are crucial for grounding the theorem in empirical evidence and scholarly recognition. Statistical methods would help identify if there's a significant pattern, while feedback from scholars would ensure the approach aligns with or complements traditional Islamic scholarship. Challenges and considerations. Cultural and scholastic sensitivity. As you noted, this approach must be handled with care to not simplify or misrepresent the rich, multifaceted nature of knowledge, ILM, in Islam. Speculative verses. Traditional interpretation. There's a risk that this numeric analysis might be seen as speculative or even unorthodox. It's essential to frame this as an additional layer of understanding rather than a replacement for traditional exegesis. Data integrity and interpretation. Ensuring that the data used, verse numbers, translations, etc., is accurate and that the interpretation of digital roots aligns with Islamic scholarship is paramount. Conclusion. Your theorem proposes an innovative way to look at the Quran's emphasis on knowledge through a numerological lens. While it offers potential new insights, it must be pursued with rigorous methodology, respect for traditional interpretations, and an open dialogue with Islamic scholars to validate or refine the findings. This could indeed contribute to a deeper appreciation of the Quran's structure and its message about the pursuit of knowledge. However, the conclusions would be tentative until backed by comprehensive scholarly review and statistical evidence. Continue, answer. Here's a continuation of the exploration into Theorem 24. Further steps and considerations, empirical validation, data collection. Compile an exhaustive list of verses related to knowledge. This would not only include direct references to ILM, knowledge, but also verses about reading, writing, reflection, teaching, and learning. Each verse would need to be assigned its digital root. Quantitative analysis. Use statistical tools to analyze the frequency of digital roots in these knowledge verses. Look for overrepresentation or underrepresentation of certain roots. Clusters or sequences of verses with similar roots, the distribution of these roots across different surahs or sections of the Quran. Correlation with themes. Investigate whether there's a correlation between the digital root and the specific type of knowledge discussed. For example, divine knowledge, practical wisdom, scientific inquiry. Qualitative interpretation, contextual analysis. Dive deeper into why certain digital roots might be prevalent in knowledge verses. Consider the linguistic patterns or rhetoric used in these verses. The narrative or thematic development in the surahs where these verses appear. Mystical and esoteric dimensions. Engage with Islamic mysticism or Sufi interpretations where numbers might have deeper meanings. This might provide a context where digital roots could be seen as more than just numbers, but as symbols of spiritual significance. Comparative study. Compare your findings with how knowledge is treated in other religious texts or with different methodologies within Islamic studies to see if any unique patterns emerge with the Quran. Scholastic engagement, peer review, and discussion. Present your findings at Islamic academic conferences or in scholarly journals. The feedback from peer scholars could either validate or challenge your observations, refining your theorem. Integration with traditional teachings. Ensure that this numeric approach is seen as an enhancement rather than a contradiction to established Tafsir Quranic exegesis. Work with scholars to integrate your findings into broader discussions about the Quran's message on knowledge. Educational impact, pedagogical application. If patterns are found, consider how this could be taught in Islamic education to encourage students to appreciate the Quran's structure and its emphasis on learning. Interdisciplinary approach. Encourage an interdisciplinary study involving linguistics, mathematics, theology, and computer science to explore new dimensions of Quranic study. Ethical and methodological reflections, avoiding misinterpretation. Be vigilant about not suggesting that numeric patterns dictate the spiritual or moral value of verses. The content and context should always be paramount. Ethical use of data. Ensure that any data analysis respects the sanctity of the text, using it for constructive and respectful scholarly purposes. Final thoughts. Theorem 24 opens a novel avenue for understanding the Quran's structure and its thematic emphasis on knowledge. However, it must be pursued with an acute awareness of its speculative nature, requiring both empirical backing and scholarly endorsement to be considered robust. This approach should aim to complement, not supplant, the traditional methods of Quranic interpretation, fostering a richer, multifaceted engagement with the text. Continue answer. Here's a further exploration of Theorem 24. Deepening the analysis, longitudinal study, historical contextualization. Consider how the understanding and appreciation of knowledge in Islam evolved through different periods. Look at whether there's a temporal pattern in how these verses were interpreted or used, possibly correlating with the digital roots of the verses. Impact of translation. Investigate how translations affect the digital root calculations, given that different languages might yield different numeric values for the same verses. This could lead to a comparative study across various translations. Advanced methodologies, machine learning and AI. Implement machine learning algorithms to detect patterns not only in digital roots, but in the semantic content of verses, potentially uncovering hidden connections or themes related to knowledge that are not immediately apparent to human analysis. Complexity theory. Apply concepts from complexity science to understand how simple rules like digital root calculations might lead to complex patterns of knowledge dissemination or thematic emphasis within the Quran. Cultural and theological implications, interfaith. Dialogue. Explore how this numeric approach might provide points of discussion or commonality with other religious traditions, where numerology or sacred geometry plays a role, fostering interfaith understanding. Revisiting Islamic numerology. Delve into traditional Islamic numerology, Jaffa, to see if there's any historical or contemporary basis for connecting digital roots to the theological significance of knowledge. Practical applications, educational tools. Develop educational tools or software that visualize the digital roots of Quranic verses, helping students of Islamic studies see the text through a new lens while reinforcing the Quran's educational ethos. Digital Quranic studies. Propose this as a new subfield within Quranic studies where digital methodologies are used to explore the text, potentially leading to new academic programs or research grants. Ethical and methodological refinements. Ethical framework. Establish an ethical framework for this type of analysis, ensuring it does not lead to reductive interpretations of the Quran or misuse for non-scholarly purposes. Methodological rigor. Continuously refine the methodology to account for biases, ensuring that the approach remains scientific and open to peer review and critique. Community and scholastic engagement. Workshops and seminars. Conduct workshops with both Islamic scholars and experts in data science to discuss findings, methodologies, and the implications of such studies. Community feedback. Engage with the broader Muslim community through surveys or discussions to understand how this approach resonates with lay believers, ensuring it's not just an academic exercise but also has relevance to spiritual practice. Conclusion. Theorem 24 could potentially transform how we interact with the Quranic text, offering a new layer of appreciation for its structure and message on knowledge. However, the journey from hypothesis to accepted theory requires rigorous data analysis, scholarly validation, respectful integration with traditional Islamic teachings, an ongoing dialogue between science, faith, and community. This exploration should be seen as an invitation to ask new questions rather than providing definitive answers, encouraging a dynamic and evolving understanding of one of the world's most influential texts. Continue answer. Here's an extended exploration of Theorem 24, interdisciplinary synergies. Linguistic analysis. Engage linguists to study how the Arabic language's numerical values, abjad numerals, might interact with modern digital root calculations. This could reveal if there's a linguistic basis for why certain roots appear more frequently in knowledge-related verses. Philosophy and theology. Explore philosophical and theological implications, questioning how numbers might reflect or shape human understanding of divine knowledge. This could involve discussions on the nature of knowledge, revelation, and the human-divine relationship. Digital humanities approach. Digital textual analysis. Use text mining techniques to not only count digital roots, but also analyze sentiment, thematic content, and stylistic elements around these verses. This could provide a richer context for interpreting why certain numbers are associated with knowledge. Interactive Quranic platforms. Develop or contribute to digital platforms where users can explore the Quran with additional layers like digital roots, offering an interactive learning experience that could appeal to younger generations or tech-savvy Muslims. Expanding the research scope. Comparative religious studies. Compare with numerological traditions in other scriptures or religious texts to see if there's a broader pattern in how sacred texts might encode knowledge or wisdom through numbers. Cultural studies. Look into how different cultures within the Islamic world might interpret these numerical patterns, considering regional variations in Islamic practice and scholarship. Educational and outreach initiatives. Curriculum. Development. Propose the inclusion of digital root analysis in Islamic studies. Curricula as a method to enhance critical thinking and interdisciplinary learning. Public lectures and online content. Create accessible content, videos, blogs, podcasts, explaining the Theorem to the public, fostering a broader appreciation for the Quran's depth and complexity. Ethical and impactful research addressing skepticism. Prepare to address skepticism from both traditionalists wary of numerological interpretations and those who might see it as an overreach of science into spiritual matters. Balance is key. Impact assessment. Study how this approach might affect personal spiritual practices, community teachings, or even the broader discourse on science and religion. Future directions, AI and predictive analysis. With advancements in AI, future studies might predict where new verses or teachings on knowledge could fit into the Quran's numeric structure, though this must be approached with caution to respect the finality and sanctity of the Quranic text. Long-term observational studies. Set up long-term studies to see if patterns hold across different editions of the Quran, various scholarly interpretations, or even in the context of new discoveries in mathematics or computing. Global Islamic scholarship. Network. Establish or contribute to a network where scholars worldwide can share, critique, and build upon this line of inquiry, ensuring a diverse and robust conversation. Final reflections. Theorem 24 could be a catalyst for not only understanding the Quran's structure, but also for dialogue between different fields of study, cultures, and faith communities. However, every step must be taken with humility, acknowledging that while numbers can tell stories, they cannot encapsulate the entirety of the Quranic message or the spiritual journey of its adherents. This research should continue to be an open-ended exploration, inviting contributions from all corners of the Islamic scholarly world and indeed from any who seek knowledge in the light of faith. Applied to Surah 96:15 web pages, applying Theorem 24 specifically to Surah 96, Al-Alaq, we can explore how the concept of knowledge, IILM, and its digital roots manifest in this chapter. Step-by-step application. 1. Identifying knowledge verses in Surah 96 verses 1-5 are central to this analysis as they contain the command to read, Iqra, which directly relates to knowledge, learning, and the act of seeking understanding. Read, in the name of your Lord who created us, 96:1. He taught by the pen, 96:4. He taught man that which he knew not, 96:5:1. Digital root calculation, verse 1. QR BSM Arbika LDK Alka. Digital root, sum of digits of verse number. 1 plus 9 plus 6 equals sign 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7, verse 4. Ildium Belkium. Digital root 4 verse 5. LM Lensan LM Yilm. Digital root 551. Pattern recognition. Digital root 7. Appearing in verse 1, which is the first command to read, could be seen as significant if one considers 7 as a number, symbolizing perfection or divine knowledge in some numerological traditions. Digital roots 4 and 5. These roots might not immediately stand out for knowledge themes unless we consider broader interpretations, where 4 could symbolize stability or foundation in learning, and 5 might represent human endeavor or the senses through which we learn. 1. Thematic depth. The verses with these digital roots are fundamentally about the inception of knowledge through divine revelation, emphasizing the importance of literacy and learning as a means to connect with the divine. 1. Structural placement. These verses are at the very beginning of the surah, which is traditionally considered the first revelation of the Quran, setting a tone of inquiry and the pursuit of knowledge from the outset. Tom 1. Symbolic and numerological significance. Given the historical context, the command to read in Surah 96 is not just about literacy, but about the revelation of knowledge itself. If we look for symbolic meaning, the digital root 7 at the start might suggest the completeness or perfection of this divine act of teaching. 1. Interconnectivity. These verses interconnect through the theme of knowledge acquisition. They might not show a direct numeric pattern with other surahs, but internally they form a cohesive message about the origin and necessity of learning. 1. Revelational context. Surah 96 was revealed in Mecca during a time when the Prophet Muhammad was solitary in contemplation, which could underscore the significance of knowledge in an environment of spiritual and intellectual isolation. 1. Statistical analysis. Given the small sample size, only 19 verses in Surah 96, broader statistical analysis might not yield significant patterns. However, the frequency of digital roots 7, 4, and 5 in these key verses could be noted. 1. Scholastic validation. Consultation with scholars would reveal that while the content of these verses is pivotal to Islamic epistemology, the numeric approach might be novel or speculative. Scholars might appreciate this method as an additional layer of understanding or see it as less relevant to traditional tafsir. Justification. The emphasis of Surah 96 on knowledge, particularly through divine revelation, aligns with the broader Islamic ethos of learning. The digital roots might offer a unique perspective, potentially highlighting how foundational this knowledge is to Islamic teachings. Limitations. Speculative nature. The digital root approach here is speculative and might not resonate with all Islamic scholars due to its numerological basis. Limited sample. With only 19 verses, drawing broad conclusions is challenging. Cultural sensitivity. Care must be taken not to overshadow the profound spiritual and moral lessons with numerical analysis. In conclusion, applying Theorem 24 to Surah 96 offers an intriguing but niche analysis. It could open discussions on how numerical patterns might reflect or enhance the understanding of knowledge in Islam, but it should be seen as supplementary to, rather than a substitute for, traditional Quranic exegesis. Continuing from our application of Theorem 24 to Surah 96 al-Alaq, let's delve deeper into the implications and potential expansions of this analysis. 1. Thematic expansion. Verses 6, 19. While these do not directly mention knowledge, they deal with the consequences of rejecting knowledge and the admonition for such rejection. Digital root analysis. Verse 6, digital root 6, could symbolize the human responsibilities and the consequences of choices regarding knowledge. Verse 19, digital root 1 might point to the unity or singularity of truth and the importance of not straying from it. 1. Broader contextual analysis. Contrast with ignorance. Surah 96 contrasts the divine command to gain knowledge with human tendencies towards arrogance or ignorance. This contrast could be explored through the digital roots of verses that admonish such behaviors. 1. Symbolic interpretation, numerical symbolism. The sequence of digital roots from 7 verse 1 to 1 verse 19 could symbolize a journey from divine knowledge to the human condition, from perfection to a reminder of unity or the oneness of truth. 1. Reflection on revelation. Revelational process. The act of receiving the Quran through these verses can be seen as the beginning of a lifelong pursuit of knowledge for Muslims, where the digital roots might reflect stages of learning or spiritual growth. 1. Pedagogical applications. Teaching methodology. This numeric approach could be used in Islamic education to engage students with the text in a novel way, perhaps through interactive lessons where students calculate digital roots and discuss their possible significance. 1. Comparative analysis with other surahs. Compare how digital roots in Surah 96 correlate with those in other surahs that discuss knowledge, like Surah al-Alaq 96 versus Surah al-Mujadila 58:11, which encourages seeking knowledge. 1. Scholastic debate, encouraging debate. This analysis could serve as a catalyst for scholarly debate on the role of numerology in Islamic exegesis, potentially leading to new interpretations or at least a deeper discussion on the methodology of Quranic study. 1. Community engagement, public discourse. Organize community discussions or lectures where this approach is presented, inviting feedback from various community members, including those with backgrounds in science, theology, and education. 1. Future research, longitudinal study. Over time, scholars could track how interpretations of these verses evolve with respect to numerological insights, perhaps through longitudinal studies or by revisiting historical tafsir in light of this new perspective. 1. Ethical considerations, respect for tradition. Ensure that any numeric analysis does not claim to be more authoritative than traditional scholarship, but rather complements it by offering a different lens through which to view the sacred text. 1. Technology integration, digital tools. Develop or use existing digital tools for Quranic study that can calculate digital roots automatically, allowing for broader and more interactive exploration by scholars and lay people alike. Conclusion. Surah 96, with its potent message of knowledge acquisition, provides fertile ground for applying Theorem 24. While the results are intriguing, they must be approached with caution and humility. The digital roots might not change the core messages of the verses, but can offer a supplementary layer of analysis that encourages a holistic appreciation of the Quran. This type of study should continue to be an open dialogue, where each insight is measured against the weight of traditional scholarship, ensuring that the pursuit of knowledge remains firmly rooted in the reverence for the Quran's teachings. Continue answer. Continuing the exploration of Theorem 24 in relation to Surah 96. Let's consider further dimensions and implications. 1. Mystical and esoteric layers. Sufi interpretations. Sufi scholars might see these digital roots as signposts to spiritual states or stages of enlightenment. For instance, the journey from 7 to 1 could symbolize moving from the macrocosm, divine knowledge, 7, to the microcosm, self-realization, 1. 1. Cultural resonance, cultural narratives. In some Islamic cultures, numbers have cultural significance. Exploring how these digital roots resonate with local traditions might provide a culturally nuanced understanding, potentially affecting how this surah is taught or celebrated in different parts of the Muslim world. 1. Personal spiritual practice, individual reflection. How might individuals incorporate this numerical perspective into their personal spiritual practice, perhaps as a form of dhikr, remembrance, or contemplation, focusing on the numbers as reminders of the Quranic call to knowledge? 1. Artistic and literary inspiration, calligraphy and art. Artists might be inspired to create works where the digital roots are visually represented, linking art with Quranic scholarship in a new way. This could be particularly impactful in Islamic art, where numerology has historical precedence. 1. Psychological impact, cognitive engagement. There's potential psychological research here on how engaging with the text through numerology might affect memory retention, appreciation, or the depth of personal understanding of Quranic verses. 1. Ethical framework for research. Guidelines for numerology in Quranic study. Establish ethical guidelines for how numerological analysis should be conducted, ensuring it does not become a tool for superstition or misinterpretation, but rather for deeper reflection and study. 1. Interdisciplinary conferences, scholarly forums. Organize conferences or symposiums where this analysis can be shared with scholars from various disciplines like mathematics, psychology, Islamic theology, and digital humanities, fostering an interdisciplinary approach. 1. Educational material development, textbooks and modules. Develop educational materials that include this analysis, not as the central focus, but as an elective module or discussion point in Islamic studies or religious education. 1. Digital humanities projects, interactive Quran. Collaborate with developers to create an interactive version of the Quran where users can explore the text with overlays of digital roots, thematic connections, and scholarly commentary. 1. Long-term scholastic impact, influence on tafsir. Over time, if this approach gains acceptance, it might influence how future tafsir commentaries are written, perhaps leading to sections or notes on the numeric aspects of verses. 1. Global Islamic education. Curriculum sharing. Share these findings with Islamic educational institutions globally, allowing for a diverse critique and adaptation of the approach to suit different educational contexts and cultural sensitivities. 1. Ethical implications. Responsibility in interpretation. Scholars engaging in this field must take responsibility for how their interpretations might be received. ensuring they do not lead to misunderstandings or misuse of the Quranic text. 1. Future research directions exploring other themes. Expand this methodology to other themes in the Quran like mercy, justice, or creation to see if similar patterns emerge, providing a more comprehensive view of how numerology might play a role in Quranic structure. Conclusion. The application of Theorem 24 to Surah 96 opens up a spectrum of possibilities for understanding one of the Quran's foundational messages about knowledge. It's a reminder that the Quran, while a sacred text, can be approached from multiple angles, each adding to the richness of its study. However, this should be done with an acknowledgement of the speculative nature of numerological analysis and the primacy of the Quran's literal and traditional interpretations. This approach should inspire curiosity and scholarship while always respecting the boundaries set by Islamic tradition. Conclusion. Answer. Conclusion. The exploration of Theorem 24 in relation to Surah 96, Al-Alaq, has illuminated an innovative approach to Quranic study through the lens of digital roots and numerology. This analysis has suggested that there might be numeric patterns related to knowledge within the Quran, potentially offering new insights into its structure and thematic emphasis. However, several key points emerge from this investigation. Complementary analysis. This numerological approach should be seen as complementary to traditional tafsir, not a replacement. It adds a layer of interpretation that might resonate with those interested in the intersection of science, mathematics, and spirituality, but it does not diminish the importance of the Quran's literal meaning or the established scholarly interpretations. Cultural and scholastic sensitivity. Any numerological interpretation must be conducted with respect for Islamic scholarship, cultural contexts, and the sanctity of the Quranic text. The focus should always be on enhancing understanding and not on reducing the Quran to mere numbers. Encouragement of inquiry. This approach encourages inquiry, inviting scholars and students to explore the Quran with curiosity and creativity. It might inspire new methodologies in Islamic education, promote interdisciplinary dialogue, and foster a deeper personal connection to the text. Ethical considerations. There must be an ethical framework guiding such studies to prevent misinterpretation or misuse. Scholars should be mindful of how their findings might be received by the broader community and ensure that their work supports rather than detracts from the spiritual and moral teachings of Islam. Speculative nature. While this study opens up exciting avenues for thought, it remains speculative. The digital roots of verses do not dictate their spiritual or moral value, but might offer an additional dimension for contemplation. Future potential. If embraced, this approach could lead to new educational tools, artistic expressions, and scholarly debates, potentially influencing how future generations engage with the Quran. It could also encourage further research into other themes and patterns within the text. Community engagement. The findings should be shared with the broader Muslim community, inviting feedback, critique, and further exploration, ensuring that this academic pursuit remains grounded in community practice and tradition. In essence, Theorem 24 applied to Surah 96 invites us to appreciate the Quran's message on knowledge in a novel way, but it must be pursued with humility, rigor, and an unwavering respect for the text's sanctity. It's an invitation to explore, question, and learn, staying true to the Quranic command to seek knowledge while acknowledging the vastness and completeness of the revelation itself. Tafsir 15 web pages. Here's a concise tafsir for Surah 96, Al-Alaq, focusing on its relation to knowledge and its implications. Surah Al-Alaq, the Clot, Chapter 96, Context and Revelation. This surah is traditionally believed to be the first revelation received by Prophet Muhammad through the angel Gabriel in the cave of Hira. It emphasizes the importance of knowledge, literacy, and the divine origin of human education. Tafsir by verses, verses 1, 5, verse 1. Read in the name of your Lord, who created. This is a command to seek knowledge, emphasizing that all learning should begin with the remembrance of Allah, the Creator. It calls for reading, which in the context of 7th century Arabia was revolutionary as it promoted literacy and knowledge acquisition. Verse 2, created man from a clot. This affirms the humble origin of humanity, reminding us that knowledge is a gift bestowed upon us by Allah, despite our initial state. Verse 3, read, and your Lord is the most generous. Here, the act of reading is tied to divine generosity, suggesting that knowledge is a form of grace from Allah. Verse 4, who taught by the pen? This verse underscores the pen's role as a tool for education, highlighting the importance of writing and recording knowledge. Verse 5, taught man that which he knew not. This concludes the section by stating that all knowledge humans possess is ultimately from Allah, encouraging continuous learning and humility in the face of the unknown. Verses 6-19. These verses transition to a warning against arrogance and the rejection of what has been taught. Verse 6, nay indeed man transgresses, points out human tendencies to exceed boundaries, often in ignorance or denial of divine guidance. Verse 7, because he sees himself self-sufficient. This is a critique of those who feel no need for divine guidance because they perceive themselves as independent or knowledgeable enough. Verses 8-19. Here, the surah criticizes Abu Jahl, a leading opponent of Islam, for his rejection of the Prophet's message, illustrating the consequences of denying knowledge and truth. It also serves as a reminder of human accountability for rejecting the truth. Thematic interpretation, knowledge as divine gift. The surah establishes knowledge as not just a human achievement, but a divine endowment, urging Muslims to seek knowledge as an act of worship and obedience to Allah. Moral responsibility. With knowledge comes responsibility. The verses highlight the moral implications of how one uses or rejects this knowledge. Humility in learning. The surah encourages humility, reminding believers that all knowledge originates from Allah, and one should not be arrogant with what they know. Contrast of ignorance and knowledge. It contrasts the light of knowledge with the darkness of ignorance, warning against the latter's dangers. Scholastic insights. Many scholars interpret these verses as an affirmation of the sanctity of learning in Islam, where education is seen as a path to understanding both the worldly and the spiritual. The mention of the pen is often cited to emphasize the importance of writing, documentation, and the preservation of knowledge. Conclusion. Surah Al-Alaq is pivotal for its introduction of the Quranic revelation and its profound emphasis on knowledge, literacy, and the moral and spiritual responsibilities that come with learning. It condemns arrogance and ignorance while promoting humility, education, and the pursuit of truth as key Islamic virtues. Continue answer. Continuing the tafsir of Surah Al-Alaq 96, here are additional insights and interpretations. Further verse analysis. Verse 10, a slave when he prays. This verse is a direct response to those who mock the Prophet Muhammad for his devotion. It underscores the humility and submission required in prayer, contrasting with human arrogance. Verses 11-14. These verses describe the punishment for those who prevent the slave, here the Prophet Muhammad, from praying or from fulfilling his mission. This part serves as a warning against obstructing the path of those who seek to follow divine guidance and knowledge. Verse 12. Have you seen if he is on guidance? A rhetorical question challenging the arrogance of those who oppose the Prophet, questioning their judgment over divine guidance. Verses 15-16. No, if he does not desist, we will surely drag him by the forelock. Symbolically, the forelock represents one's honor or pride. This is a warning of divine intervention against those who persist in their arrogance and rejection of truth. Verses 17-18. A lying, sinful forelock. These verses further elaborate on the character of the one who is warned, linking their physical behavior with moral corruption. Verse 19. Then let him call his associates. This is seen as a sarcastic remark, implying that if the disbeliever relies on others for support against the truth, it will be futile. Thematic deepening, education, and worship. The surah links the pursuit of knowledge directly with spiritual practice, suggesting that true education involves both intellectual growth and spiritual devotion. Divine authority versus human arrogance. There's a clear theme of contrasting Allah's sovereignty and the human tendency to overstep bounds when feeling self-sufficient or knowledgeable. Accountability. The surah underscores personal accountability, particularly in how one responds to divine knowledge. It warns against the misuse of free will to deny or belittle the truth. Historical and cultural context. Mecca. Revelation. Being one of the earliest revelations in Mecca, this surah was a direct challenge to the societal norms of an illiterate culture, promoting literacy and the pursuit of knowledge as a means to understand divine will. In opposition to the message, the surah also reflects the opposition Muhammad faced when he began to preach. It speaks to the resilience required to maintain faith and spread knowledge in the face of adversity. Scholastic interpretations, Ibn Kathir, he emphasizes that the command, read, was the beginning of the prophetic mission, urging believers to seek knowledge as a form of worship. Al-Tabari notes the significance of the pen, stating that through it, Allah has conveyed his message, making it a symbol of divine communication and human responsibility. Modern interpretations. Contemporary scholars often draw parallels between the surah's emphasis on knowledge and the current information age, advocating for the ethical use of knowledge and the continuous quest for learning. Practical implications, encouragement of education. The surah has been a foundation for Islamic educational systems, encouraging the establishment of schools, libraries, and the pursuit of sciences. Moral education. It's a reminder of the moral dimension of education, where knowledge should lead to humility, justice, and betterment of society. Spiritual practice. The connection between prayer, an act of humility, and learning suggests that spiritual growth is intertwined with intellectual development. Conclusion. Surah Al-Alaq is a profound call to knowledge, literacy, and the humble submission to divine guidance. It stands as a testament to the Islamic principle that seeking knowledge is an act of worship, a moral duty, and a means of drawing closer to Allah. Its teachings remain relevant, advocating for education as a tool for personal and communal enlightenment, while warning against the perils of ignorance and arrogance. Continuing the tafsir of Surah Al-Alaq with further reflections and implications. Further reflections on themes, knowledge as liberation. The surah paints knowledge not only as a divine gift but also as a means of liberation from ignorance, superstition, and oppression. By promoting literacy, it implicitly challenges the status quo of the time, where knowledge was often controlled by the elite. The role of the teacher, the imagery of the pen, and the act of teaching underscore the sacred role of educators in Islam. Teachers are seen as carrying forward the divine mission of spreading knowledge, akin to the prophetic mission of guidance. The divine-human relationship. The surah emphasizes that true knowledge leads to a better understanding of one's relationship with Allah. It's an invitation to see learning as a spiritual journey where each piece of knowledge brings one closer to divine wisdom. Mystical and esoteric interpretations. Sufi perspective. Some Sufi interpretations see the command to read as an invitation to read the signs of Allah in creation and within oneself, leading to self-knowledge and ultimately to knowledge of Allah. The journey from ignorance to enlightenment is often symbolized through these verses. Symbolism of the pen. Beyond its literal meaning, the pen can symbolize the heart or the intellect through which divine knowledge is inscribed. This view sees learning as an inward process of spiritual refinement. Practical applications in Islamic life. Education as obligatory. The emphasis on knowledge in this surah has led to the principle that seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim, male and female, as famously narrated by the Prophet Muhammad. Ethical learning. The surah encourages Muslims to approach knowledge with ethics, humility, and a sense of responsibility. Education should lead to actions that benefit society, uphold justice, and serve humanity. Prayer and knowledge. There's an implicit link between the act of prayer, which requires humility and submission, and the pursuit of knowledge, suggesting that one's learning should be grounded in spiritual practice for it to be truly beneficial. Social and educational impact, foundational for Islamic scholarship. This surah has been pivotal in inspiring the rich tradition of Islamic scholarship, where learning in various sciences, including theology, law, medicine, and philosophy, has been highly valued. Encouragement of literacy. The command Iqra, read, has had a significant impact on the Muslim world's emphasis on literacy and education, leading to the establishment of educational institutions like madrasas, reform movements. Historically, this surah has been cited by reformers to advocate for educational reforms, emphasizing the role of education in social progress and spiritual awakening. Challenges and modern relevance, balancing science and faith. In modern times, this surah is often referenced in discussions about how to balance scientific inquiry with religious belief, advocating for a holistic approach where science and faith are not in conflict but complementary. Global education. The call to knowledge resonates with global efforts to promote education as a right, aligning Islamic teachings with universal values of enlightenment and human development. Digital age. The surah's message can be reinterpreted in the context of the digital age, where information is abundant, but discerning knowledge from misinformation is crucial. Conclusion: Surah Al-Alaq remains a powerful testament to the Islamic value placed on knowledge. It serves as a perennial reminder of the duty to seek understanding, the humility required in learning, and the moral responsibility that comes with knowledge. Its lessons are timeless, urging Muslims to engage with education not just intellectually but spiritually, socially, and ethically, thereby fulfilling the divine command to read in all aspects of life. The axiomatic system for analyzing the Quran through the lens of digital root analysis combined with connectivity offers a unique approach to Quranic scholarship. Here are some considerations and extensions of your framework. Extended definitions, network N. The Quran can be conceptualized as a network where each verse is a node and connections are edges. This network can be directed or undirected depending on whether the influence or relevance of verses is considered one-way or reciprocal. Weight, W. An additional attribute to each connection could be a weight reflecting the strength or importance of the thematic, linguistic, or revelational link. This might be based on frequency of scholarly citation, depth of thematic similarity, or scriptural context. Additional axioms, Axiom 7, consistency in connection strength. For any connection V1, V2 in C, there exists a weight, W, V1, V2, that quantifies the strength or relevance of the connection. This weight could be normalized or ranked. Axiom 8, symmetry of thematic links. Not all connections need to be bidirectional. For some verses, V2 might be thematically linked to V1 but not vice versa, suggesting an asymmetric network structure. Theorems and corollaries corollary to Theorem 1. If weights are introduced, the combined metric CM might not be as straightforward. The formula might need adjustment to incorporate weight, perhaps as CM, V1, V2, equal sign DR NV1 plus DOS, V1, V2 plus W, V1, V2. Theorem 3, pattern recognition. Patterns in digital roots might correlate with thematic clusters or specific surahs, chapters, providing a mathematical basis for observing structural coherence or thematic groupings within the Quran. Proof of Theorem 3. By analyzing the distribution of digital roots across verses known to belong to similar themes or revealed during similar periods, one could statistically test for patterns or anomalies. Methodology for application, digital root mapping. Create a visualization where each verse is positioned based on its digital root and connections are drawn. This could highlight clusters or outliers in the Quranic text. Pathfinding algorithms. Use algorithms like Dijkstra's or A** for finding the shortest path, least degree of separation between verses, which could be useful for thematic studies or for exploring less obvious connections. Simulation and analysis. Run simulations to see how changing one aspect, like the importance of certain thematic links, might affect the network's connectivity or the distribution of combined metrics. Critical considerations. Cultural and scholastic sensitivity. Any numerical or connectivity-based analysis must be approached with respect to Islamic scholarship, where interpretations often have profound cultural and theological implications. Validation through tafsir. Traditional exegesis, tafsir, should be used to validate or challenge findings from this model. There's a risk of interpreting sacred text through a lens that might not align with established theological insights. Ethical use. Ensure this method does not lead to reducing the Quran's rich, multifaceted meanings into mere numbers or connections, which might be seen as reductive or even sacrilegious by some. Your approach combines mathematical theory with religious text in a novel way, potentially offering new avenues for study, but also presenting challenges in ensuring scholarly and community acceptance. It's a fascinating intersection of numerology, network theory, and religious studies. Applying the extended digital root analysis and connectivity framework to Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah 1 of the Quran. Digital root analysis. Digital root of each verse. Verse 1, Bismi, Luwahi, Lurwahmani, Luwahimi, sum of numeric values, abjad of letters leads to a digital root. However, for simplicity, if we sum the positions of verses, since Surah Al-Fatiha has only 7 verses, we can treat each verse as having a position from 1 to 7. The digital root for each verse would be verse 1. 1, digital root, dr, equal sign 1 verse 2, 2, dr equal sign 2 verse 3, 3, dar equal sign 3 verse 4, 4, dar equal sign 4 verse 5, 5, dagger equal sign 5 verse 6, 6, dagger equal sign 6 verse 7, 7, dikta equal sign 7. This simplistic approach doesn't account for the actual numerical value of the letters, but gives us a starting point for understanding connectivity through position. Network, N and connections, nodes and edges. Each verse is a node. Connections or edges can be thematic links. Al-Fatiha is known for its structure where each verse builds upon the last, leading from praise of Allah to a plea for guidance. Thus, verse 1 to 2, connection through the theme of invoking Allah's name, Basmala. Verse 2 to 3, connection via the attributes of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Verse 3 to 7, sequential thematic progression from acknowledging Allah's sovereignty to asking for guidance. Directed network. This surah naturally forms a directed network where each verse leads into the next, but not necessarily vice versa, especially in terms of narrative flow. Weights W, weights for connections, verse 1 to verse 2. High weight due to the universal Islamic practice of starting all surahs except one with the Basmala, indicating a strong liturgical and thematic connection. Weight might be close to 1, verse 2 to verse 3. Also high weight because these verses define Allah, setting the context for the supplications that follow. Subsequent connections, lower weights as they progressively build the prayer, with perhaps the highest weight on the connection from verse 6 to 7 where the plea for guidance is directly addressed. Axioms applied. Axiom 7, consistency in connection strength. Weights here reflect the theological and liturgical significance of connections, highlighting the structured nature of Al-Fatiha. Axiom 8, symmetry of thematic links. In Al-Fatiha, connections are predominantly one way due to the prayer's structure, making it an example of a directional network. Theorems and corollaries. Corollary to Theorem 1. With weights, the combined metric for understanding the connection between verses would be EM V1 V2 equal sign DR V1 plus DOS V1 V2 plus W V1 V2. Here, DOS could be minimal or zero due to the sequential nature, but W would be significant. Theorem 3, pattern recognition. The digital roots of Al-Fatiha, when mapped, might show a pattern where each verse increases in digital roots, symbolizing an increase in the intensity or depth of the prayer. Methodology application, digital root mapping. Visualizing Al-Fatiha with digital roots would show a linear increase from 1 to 7, potentially representing the journey from acknowledgement to supplication. Pathfinding algorithms, not particularly relevant here due to the linear nature of the surah, but could be used to model the flow of prayer or thematic emphasis. Critical considerations, cultural and scholastic sensitivity. Any interpretation must align with traditional Islamic understanding, especially since Al-Fatiha is central to daily prayers. Validation through tafsir, the analysis should be cross-checked with classical exegesis to ensure no dissonance with established interpretations. Ethical use. This analysis should not be seen as reducing the spiritual significance of Al-Fatiha, but rather as an aid to appreciate its structure and thematic coherence. This application of your framework to Surah Al-Fatiha demonstrates how mathematical and network analysis can offer new perspectives while respecting the sacred text's traditional interpretations. Continuing from the application of the framework to Surah Al-Fatiha, further analysis and expansion, simulation and analysis, connection strength. Adjustment. By adjusting the weights of connections, one could simulate how different emphases on parts of the prayer might alter the perceived thematic coherence. For instance, if we increase the weight between verse 6, the straight path, and verse 7, guidance, we might explore how this impacts the understanding of the prayer's climax or its moral and spiritual guidance. Thematic clusters. Although Al-Fatiha is short, it could be part of a broader network analysis by connecting it to other surahs. For example, the themes in Al-Fatiha resonate with the themes of divine guidance, mercy and worship, which could be linked to similar themes in other surahs, like Surah Al-Baqarah, where guidance is also a central theme. Pathfinding algorithms, exploring thematic flow. Even though Al-Fatiha is linear, pathfinding algorithms could be metaphorically applied to understand the shortest conceptual path from praising Allah to asking for guidance, which might not be strictly linear in thematic exploration by a scholar or in personal reflection. Network dynamics, influence mapping. By considering how Al-Fatiha influences other parts of the Quran or how it's influenced by the context of revelation, for example, the Meccan period, we can map incoming edges, other verses or surahs that reference or expand upon themes introduced in Al-Fatiha. Outgoing edges, how Al-Fatiha's themes are echoed or expanded in subsequent revelations. Critical considerations, continued Interdisciplinary dialogue, engaging with scholars from different fields, theology, computer science, linguistics, to refine this approach. This could lead to workshops or conferences where these methods are discussed in light of traditional scholarship. Educational tools develop educational materials or digital tools that use this analysis to teach the structure and significance of Al-Fatiha, ensuring that the tools are accessible to lay people while still providing depth for scholars. Community feedback. Present this analysis in community settings or online platforms to gather feedback from diverse Muslim communities, ensuring cultural and doctrinal sensitivities are addressed and respected. Longitudinal study. Over time, observe how interpretations or scholarly discussions on Al-Fatiha evolve with the introduction of such analytical tools, which might lead to new subfields in Quranic studies or influence traditional tafsir practices. Conclusion. The application of this digital root and connectivity analysis to Surah Al-Fatiha highlights how modern computational methods can complement traditional scholarship. However, it's crucial to maintain a balance where the spiritual, theological, and cultural essence of the text remains paramount. This approach can potentially offer insights into the structural and thematic coherence of Al-Fatiha, a new methodology for teaching and understanding the Quran in a digital age. An invitation to re-examine how we connect with the text in light of modern scholarship tools, while always grounding these explorations in the rich tradition of Islamic exegesis. Continuing further with the application of the digital root and connectivity analysis framework to Surah Al-Fatiha, advanced network analysis, community detection. Even in a small surah like Al-Fatiha, we can explore thematic communities. By viewing each verse as part of a thematic community, we might find verses 2, 3 forming one community centered around the attributes of Allah, mercy, compassion. Verses 4, 6 forming another community focused on worship and recognition of Allah's sovereignty. Verse 7 could be seen as a conclusion or a bridge to the broader Quranic narrative of guidance. Centrality measures. Although less applicable due to the brevity of Al-Fatiha, we can still conceptualize degree centrality. Which verse has the most connections? In Al-Fatiha, every verse is equally connected in a linear fashion. But in a larger context, this could highlight verses pivotal to understanding the surah's message. Betweenness centrality. Which verse acts as a bridge between different themes or parts of the prayer? Here, verse 7 might serve this role as it concludes the prayer with a request for guidance. Semantic analysis integration, word frequency and co-occurrence. Analyzing how often certain words appear, like Allah, guidance, worship, and their co-occurrences could help in defining the thematic weight of connections beyond position or digital root, giving a semantic layer to network analysis. Semantic similarity. Comparing verses for semantic content might reveal deeper connections or nuances. For instance, the similarity between the invocation of Allah's grace in verses 2, 3, and the plea for guidance in verse 7. Dynamic network modeling, temporal analysis. Considering Al-Fatiha's role in the chronological revelation of the Quran, it's often considered the first complete surah revealed. We could model how its themes might have influenced or been influenced by other revelations, creating a temporal layer to the network. Prayer dynamics. Al-Fatiha is recited multiple times daily in prayer. Modeling how this repetition might reinforce or evolve one's understanding of the surah could be insightful. Using network dynamics to simulate the deepening of spiritual connection over time. Cultural and linguistic context. Linguistic patterns. Studying the rhetorical patterns in Al-Fatiha, such as the use of parallelism or alliteration, might enhance the understanding of how verses connect. This could be integrated into the weights or as an additional layer to the network analysis. Cultural significance. Exploring how Al-Fatiha is interpreted or taught in different cultural contexts within the Islamic world could add a dimension of variability to the network. This might involve different connection strengths or thematic emphases based on cultural interpretations. Feedback loop for methodology, iterative refinement. After initial analysis, feedback from scholars or the broader Muslim community could lead to refinement of axioms, weights, or the definition of nodes and edges to better reflect theological nuances or scholarly consensus. Validation through practice. Implementing this analysis in teaching or in interactive digital Qurans, where users can explore these connections, could serve as real-world validation. Observing how users interact with these tools might provide insights into the efficacy and reception of the method. conclusion and future directions. This extended analysis of Surah Al-Fatiha through a network and digital root framework not only deepens our understanding of one of the Quran's most pivotal surahs, but also sets a methodological precedent for studying the rest of the scripture. The next steps might involve expanding this analysis to other surahs, to see if patterns or themes hold across the whole text, developing software or digital platforms specifically for Islamic scholarship that incorporate these analytical methods, encouraging interdisciplinary research where computer scientists, linguists, and theologians work together to further refine and apply these techniques. By continually aligning these modern methods with traditional Islamic scholarship, we can foster a richer, more nuanced understanding of the Quran that respects its sacredness while exploring new avenues of thought. Continuing from the detailed application of the digital root and connectivity analysis framework to Surah Al-Fatiha, cross-surah analysis, macro-network analysis, extend the network to include links between Al-Fatiha and other surahs, thematic echoes. Look for thematic resonances between Al-Fatiha and other surahs like Al-Baqarah or Al-Ikhlas, where themes of divine unity, guidance, and worship are also prominent. Structural parallels. Identify surahs with similar structural elements or rhetorical devices, enhancing the understanding of Al-Fatiha's unique structure in a broader context. Intertextual connections. Explore how Al-Fatiha might be referenced or echoed in other parts of the Quran. Explicit references, where other surahs explicitly mention or allude to concepts from Al-Fatiha. Implicit connections, thematic or moral underpinnings that align with Al-Fatiha's message. Enhanced visualization techniques. 3D network models. Create 3D visualizations where Z-axis represents thematic depth or frequency of occurrence. X and Y axes could represent digital roots or verse positions, providing a visual representation of how themes might intersect or diverge. Interactive visualizations. Develop tools where users can click on verses to see their connections, digital roots or thematic analyses. Adjust weights to see how changing the emphasis on certain themes affects the network structure. Machine learning applications. Predictive modeling. Use machine learning to predict thematic connections or to suggest verses that might have similar digital roots or messages. Clustering. Group verses into clusters based on semantic content, digital roots or network properties. Recommendation systems. Suggest verses or surahs for further study based on user interest or current study focus. Sentiment analysis. Although challenging due to the sacred nature of the text, sentiment analysis could provide insights into the emotional or spiritual tone of verses. Comparing sentiments across verses might highlight shifts in tone or focus, which could be reflected in network connections. Educational and scholastic applications. Curriculum development. Use this framework to develop educational materials where students learn about the Quran not just through traditional tafsir, but also through visual and analytical methods, fostering a deeper understanding. Scholarly workshops organize academic sessions where scholars can critique, refine, or expand upon this methodology. This could lead to standardized practices or guidelines for using such methods in Quranic studies. Ethical and cultural integration. Community involvement. Engage with different Muslim communities to ensure the methodology respects various interpretations and cultural contexts. It is not seen as diminishing the Quran's spiritual significance, but rather as an aid for deeper study. Ethical AI guidelines. Establish guidelines for AI and computational analysis of sacred texts. Ensuring respect for the text, avoiding any interpretations that might be seen as oversimplification or misrepresentation. Future research directions. Longitudinal studies. Study how interpretations or scholarly focus on Al-Fatiha changes over time with the introduction of these analytical tools. This could inform how we view the evolution of Quranic scholarship. Interfaith dialogue. Use similar methods to analyze sacred texts from other religions, fostering interfaith understanding by showing common themes or different approaches to divine revelation. Digital humanities. Position this work within the broader context of digital humanities, where the Quran becomes a case study for how digital methods can engage with cultural and religious heritage. By expanding this research, we not only deepen the scholarly engagement with one of the world's most revered texts, but also contribute to the field of religious studies by illustrating how computational methods can illuminate ancient wisdom in new ways. However, the key will always be to proceed with humility, respect, and a commitment to preserving the sacred essence of the Quran. Continuing the tafsir exegesis of Surah Al-Fatiha, integrating the network and digital root analysis framework, verse-by-verse analysis. Verse 1, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, digital root, 1 tafsir and connectivity, thematic. This verse sets the tone for the entire Quranic discourse, invoking Allah's name with his attributes of mercy, Rahman, and compassion, Rahim. Network connection. Strong directed connections to all subsequent verses, as it is the invocation that sanctifies and begins the prayer. In broader Quranic context, it connects to every surah that begins with this invocation, highlighting its universal significance. Weight, very high, almost at its maximum, given its ritualistic importance in Islamic practice. Verse 2, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, digital root, 2 tafsir and connectivity, thematic. Praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of all worlds. This continues from the invocation, specifying the reason for worship, the acknowledgement of Allah's sovereignty over creation. Network connection connects back to verse 1 through the theme of divine attributes, but also forward to verse 3, where these attributes are further elaborated. It sets up the justification for worship by recognizing Allah's dominion. Weight high, as it's foundational to the act of prayer and the Quranic message of divine unity. Verse 3, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, digital root, 3 tafsir and connectivity, thematic, reiteration of Allah's mercy and compassion. Emphasizing these qualities are not just names, but intrinsic to his nature. Network connection. This verse directly links back to verse 1, reinforcing the initial attributes mentioned, and forwards to verse 4, where the act of worship is directly linked to these merciful qualities. Weight high, as it deepens the understanding of why Allah is worshipped, his boundless mercy. Verse 4, Malika Yawmid Din, digital root, 4 tafsir and connectivity, thematic, master of the day of judgment. This introduces the eschatological aspect of Islam, highlighting Allah's justice alongside his mercy. Network connection connects back to the sovereignty mentioned in verse 2, but also looks forward to the plea for guidance in verse 7, as the day of judgment is where guidance leads. Weight, important, as it brings the temporal aspect of worship into focus, the acknowledgement of accountability. Verse 5, Iyaka nabudu wa iyaka nasta'in, digital root, 5 tafsir and connectivity, thematic, you alone we worship and you alone we ask for help. This verse shifts from describing Allah to the worshipper's commitment and dependency on Allah. Network connection. It's a response to the previous verse's portrayal of Allah, connecting directly to verse 6, where the ask for guidance begins. Weight, medium to high, as it's both a declaration of faith and a plea for divine support. Verse 6, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, digital root, 6. Tafsir and connectivity, thematic, guide us to the straight path. This verse formally begins the supplication part of Al-Fatiha, asking for guidance in life's journey. Network connection. It connects to verse 5, where the need for Allah's help is acknowledged, and directly to verse 7, where the path is described in more detail. Weight, high, as it's the core of the prayer's request. Verse 7, Siratal ladaina an amta alayhim, Geril magdubi alayhim waladalin, digital root, 7. Tafsir and connectivity, thematic, the path of those whom you have blessed, not of those who have earned your anger, nor of those who have gone astray. This verse concludes Al-Fatiha by specifying the nature of the guidance sought. Network connection. It wraps up the prayer, linking back to verse 6's plea for guidance, but also connecting to the broader Quranic narrative of guidance versus misguidance, salvation versus damnation. Weight very high, as it not only concludes the prayer, but also sets moral and spiritual standards for believers. Holistic tafsir with network analysis, structural coherence, the digital roots from 1 to 7 suggest a progression in the prayer's narrative from invocation to supplication, mirroring the spiritual journey from recognition of Allah to seeking his guidance. Thematic network. Al-Fatiha can be seen as a mini-network where nodes, verses, are interconnected by themes of praise, recognition of divine attributes, acknowledgement of judgment, declaration of worship, and finally, a plea for guidance. The structure reflects a journey from the individual to the universal, from the tangible attributes of Allah to the abstract spiritual guidance. Educational use. This analysis can help in teaching the structural beauty of Al-Fatiha, how each verse builds upon the last, creating a coherent and complete prayer. Scholarly implications. By understanding these connections, scholars can explore deeper into how Al-Fatiha encapsulates key Islamic concepts in a concise manner, serving as both a daily prayer and a summary of the Quranic ethos. This extended tafsir, enriched by network analysis, not only deepens our understanding of Al-Fatiha but also exemplifies how traditional exegesis can be enhanced by modern analytical methods, always ensuring respect for the sacred text's inherent meanings and teachings. Continuing the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha with an integration of network and digital root analysis, further thematic and semantic exploration, intertextuality with other Quranic passages, verse 1 and 2, thematic echoes, the phrase Alhamdulillahi, all praise is due to Allah, is echoed in other parts of the Quran like Surah Al-An'am 6:1 and Al-Kahf 18:1. This creates a network of praise, highlighting the centrality of gratitude and acknowledgement of Allah in Islamic theology. Verse 3, divine attributes. The repeated mention of Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim can be linked to Surah Al-Araf 7:156, where these attributes are further elaborated in the context of Prophet Muhammad's mission, showing a network of mercy across the Quran. Verse 4, judgment. The concept of Maliki Yawmiddin, Master of the Day of Judgment, connects to numerous verses throughout the Quran that speak of accountability, like Al-Anbiya 21:47, forming a thematic network of eschatology. Verse 5, monotheism and dependence. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship and you alone we ask for help, resonates with Surah Al-Araf 7:55, where the exclusivity of worship to Allah is emphasized, creating a strong node of Tawheed, oneness of God, in the Quranic network. Verse 6 and 7. Guidance. The plea for guidance ties directly into Surah Al-Baqarah 2:2, which starts with, "This is the book, in it is guidance sure, without doubt," illustrating a network of guidance that runs through the Quran, from the opening surah to others. Digital root implications, pattern recognition. The digital roots ascending from 1 to 7 could be seen as symbolic of the spiritual journey from the mundane to the divine, from creation to the creator, from ignorance to enlightenment. Thematic clusters. If we consider digital roots as markers, we could hypothesize that lower digital roots, 1, 2, 3, might generally pertain to the acknowledgement of Allah and His attributes. Middle roots, 4, 5, might delve into human interaction with the divine, including worship and seeking help. Higher roots, 6, 7, could be associated with the ultimate purpose of life, seeking guidance and distinguishing the right path from the wrong. Network dynamics in prayer. Recitation and reflection. Al-Fatiha's structure in prayer allows for a dynamic interaction where each recitation could be seen as a node in a personal spiritual network, where the worshipper connects with these themes repeatedly, potentially deepening their understanding and connection with each recitation. Community aspect. When recited in congregation, Al-Fatiha forms a communal network where individual spiritual experiences are linked, creating a collective spiritual journey through shared worship. Practical applications, teaching and learning, visual tools. Based on this analysis could be developed to teach the structure of Al-Fatiha, showing how each verse is not isolated but part of a larger thematic network. Scholarly research. Scholars could explore how digital root analysis correlates with traditional thematic divisions, or tafsir, perhaps leading to new insights or confirmation of established interpretations. Digital Quranic studies. Implement this analysis in digital Qurans or apps where users can explore these connections interactively, perhaps through layers of commentary that link to other verses or surahs with similar themes or digital roots. Ethical and cultural considerations. Respect for tradition. Any analysis should be presented with an acknowledgement of the traditional tafsir, ensuring that this method complements rather than supplants established interpretations. Cultural sensitivity. Recognize that different Islamic traditions might emphasize different aspects of Al-Fatiha, and thus the digital root and network analysis should be adaptable to various schools of thought within Islam. Concluding thoughts. By integrating digital root and network analysis into the tafsir of Al-Fatiha, we not only enrich our understanding of this surah, but also open up a methodological approach that could be applied to other parts of the Quran. This approach respects the sanctity of the text while employing contemporary tools to explore its timeless message, potentially fostering a deeper, more interconnected appreciation of the Quran's teachings. Continuing the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha, with further exploration into the implications of digital root and network analysis, advanced interpretations, symbolic interpretation of digital roots, unity and multiplicity. The progression from 1 to 7 in digital roots might symbolically represent unity, 1, the singularity of Allah and the start of all prayers. duality. 2. The recognition of Allah's creation, the dichotomy between creator and creation. Trinity. 3. Not in the Christian sense, but perhaps the three aspects of worship: acknowledgement, praise, and supplication. Quaternity. 4. The four directions, possibly symbolizing Allah's dominion over all aspects of existence. Quintessence. 5. The essence of worship, where humans acknowledge their dependency on Allah. Hexad. 6. The connection to perfection in Islamic numerology, where seeking guidance aligns with the quest for spiritual perfection. Septenary. 7. Often linked to completion or the end of a cycle, here representing the conclusion of the prayer and the hope for divine guidance leading to spiritual completion. Network analysis in daily life, spiritual growth. Each recitation of Al-Fatiha could be considered a node in the personal spiritual journey of a Muslim, where each node links to personal growth, reflection, and understanding of the Quran's teachings based on life experiences. Social bonds. Al-Fatiha's recitation in communal prayer settings forms a network of social bonds where the shared experience of worship connects individuals, strengthening community ties through shared spiritual objectives. Interdisciplinary approaches, psychological insights. The psychological impact of reciting Al-Fatiha daily could be explored, looking at how the structured nature of its verses might influence the psyche, promoting states of peace, gratitude, and humility. Linguistic analysis. A deeper dive into the Arabic language of Al-Fatiha could reveal how word choice, rhythm, and syntax contribute to the thematic network, perhaps using natural language processing to quantify these effects. Extension to other surahs. Comparative Tafsir. Use Al-Fatiha as a model to analyze other opening verses of surahs or those with similar themes, looking for digital root patterns or network connections that might highlight thematic continuities or contrasts across the Quran. Thematic mapping. Create a thematic map of the Quran where Al-Fatiha serves as a central hub, with connections radiating out to other surahs or verses that echo or expand upon its themes. Educational and devotional tools. Interactive learning. Develop apps or educational modules where students can interact with a visual representation of Al-Fatiha's network, clicking through to explore connections perhaps with multimedia content like videos or audio explanations from scholars. Spiritual reflection. Create devotional aids where the user can meditate on the digital roots and network connections, perhaps through guided reflections or meditative practices that focus on each verse's significance and the broader context. Community and scholarly engagement. Scholarly workshops. Host workshops where these analytical methods are discussed in light of traditional tafsir, inviting feedback to refine approaches, ensuring they align with Islamic principles. Community feedback. Engage with different Muslim communities globally to understand how these interpretations resonate, adapt the methodology to respect cultural nuances, and gather insights for further development. Future directions, long-term studies that examine how this method of analysis impacts understanding and practice among Muslims over time. Does it lead to new interpretations or strengthen existing ones? Interfaith dialogue. Use similar analytical methods to compare opening prayers or foundational texts in other religions, promoting interfaith understanding by focusing on structural similarities or philosophical parallels. AI and ethical considerations. As AI technology advances, consider how it might be used to further enhance Quranic studies while maintaining ethical boundaries, ensuring that AI aids, not dictates, human understanding of sacred texts. By pushing the boundaries of traditional tafsir with these modern analytical tools, we not only enrich our understanding of Al-Fatiha, but also contribute to a broader, more interconnected approach to studying the Quran. This method respects the past while exploring new avenues for spiritual and intellectual growth. The Quran is a source of profound wisdom and guidance. It has been a beacon of light for millions of people throughout history, offering insights and principles that transcend time and place. It speaks to humanity across time and cultures, bridging gaps and fostering a sense of unity among diverse communities. The Quran's teachings resonate with people from all walks of life, providing a common ground for understanding and compassion. We can explore its depths in many ways. Scholars and researchers have dedicated their lives to studying its verses, uncovering layers of meaning and interpretation. Through meticulous analysis and reflection, they reveal the Quran's timeless relevance, One intriguing approach is through digital roots and network theory. This modern method allows us to analyze the Quran in ways that were previously unimaginable, using technology to map out its intricate web of ideas. This method helps us see the Quran as a network of interconnected ideas. By visualizing the relationships between verses, we can gain new insights into the text's structure and meaning. Imagine each verse as a point of light. Each one shines with its own unique brilliance, contributing to the overall illumination of the Quran's message. These points connect, forming a constellation of meaning. Just as stars in the night sky create patterns and shapes, the verses of the Quran interlink to form a cohesive and profound narrative. By analyzing these connections, we can uncover hidden relationships. This approach allows us to see how different parts of the Quran relate to each other, revealing deeper layers of understanding. We can gain a deeper understanding of the Quran's message. Through this network analysis, we can appreciate the Quran's complexity and its ability to convey profound wisdom in a harmonious and interconnected manner. This method not only enhances our comprehension, but also enriches our spiritual connection to the text. In our network, each verse becomes a node. These nodes are not just random points, they are carefully chosen elements that represent the essence of the Quranic message. Each node holds a unique piece of information, a distinct verse that contributes to the overall understanding of the text. Nodes are like cities on a map. Just as cities are hubs of activity and culture, these nodes are centers of meaning and significance within the Quran. They are the building blocks of our network, each one playing a crucial role in the larger picture. They represent distinct points of information. Each city on a map has its own unique characteristics, and similarly, each verse in the Quran has its own unique message and context. These points of information are the foundation upon which we build our understanding. The connections between them are called edges. These edges are not arbitrary, they are carefully drawn lines that represent the relationships between different verses. They show how one verse can lead to another, creating a pathway of understanding. Edges act like roads, linking verses together. Just as roads connect cities, these edges connect verses, allowing us to travel from one idea to another. They help us navigate the complex landscape of the Quran, making it easier to see how different parts are interconnected. These connections can be based on various factors. Shared themes, linguistic similarities, and numerical patterns can all form edges. For example, verses that share a common theme, such as mercy or justice, can be linked together. Similarly, verses that use similar linguistic structures or patterns can also be connected, and numerical patterns can all form edges. These patterns are not just random coincidences, they are deliberate choices that add depth and complexity to the text. By identifying these patterns, we can gain a deeper understanding of the Quran's message. By studying these edges, we can see how different parts of the Quran relate to each other. This relational understanding allows us to see the Quran as a cohesive whole, rather than a collection of isolated verses. It helps us appreciate the interconnectedness of its message. We can begin to appreciate the intricate tapestry of its message. The Quran is not just a series of disconnected statements. It is a carefully woven tapestry of ideas and themes. By connecting the dots, we can see the beauty and complexity of its message and gain a deeper appreciation for its wisdom and guidance. Not all connections are equal. Some links between verses are stronger than others. We represent this difference through weighted connections. Imagine a thick road signifying a strong relationship between verses. A thin road indicates a weaker link. The weight of the connection reflects the depth of the relationship. This weighting helps us prioritize our analysis. We can focus on the most significant connections within the Quranic network. To make sense of this network, we need rules. We call these rules axioms. Axioms are fundamental principles that guide our understanding. One axiom might be stronger thematic links between verses result in stronger connections. Another could be symmetry in thematic connections amplifies their weight. These axioms provide a framework for analyzing the Quranic network. They help us interpret the connections between verses in a meaningful way. Section 5. Patterns in Numbers Unveiling Hidden Structures. In this section, we delve into the fascinating world of numerical patterns within the Quran, exploring how these hidden structures can offer deeper insights into the text. Numbers play a significant role in the Quran. They are not just mere figures, but hold profound symbolic meanings and connections that can be uncovered through careful analysis. Digital root analysis reveals fascinating patterns. This method involves reducing numbers to their simplest form, which can then be used to identify hidden relationships within the text. The digital root of a number is found by adding its digits repeatedly until a single digit remains. For instance, the number 123 would be reduced to 1 plus 2 plus 3, which equals 6. This single digit can then be used to find connections between different verses. These digital roots can form connections between verses. By examining the digital roots of verse numbers, scholars can uncover patterns that might not be immediately apparent. For example, verses with the same digital root might share thematic similarities. This can provide a new perspective on the text, revealing underlying themes and messages that are consistent throughout the Quran. By studying these numerical patterns, we can uncover hidden structures within the Quran. These structures can offer insights into the divine wisdom and intricate design of the text, showing how every element is interconnected. This method can reveal new layers of meaning and interconnectedness. By understanding the numerical patterns, we can appreciate the depth and complexity of the Quran, gaining a greater appreciation for its divine origin and the meticulous care with which it was composed. The study of numerical patterns is not just an academic exercise, it is a journey into the heart of the Quran, where numbers and words come together to form a tapestry of divine knowledge. This exploration can deepen our understanding and connection to the text, enriching our spiritual journey. As we continue to unveil these hidden structures, we open new doors to understanding the Quran. Each discovery brings us closer to the divine message, allowing us to see the Quran in a new light and appreciate its timeless wisdom. In conclusion, the study of numerical patterns in the Quran is a powerful tool for uncovering hidden meanings and connections. It is a testament to the Quran's divine origin and the intricate design that lies within its verses. Through this exploration, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the Quran and its timeless message. Section 6. Mapping the Quran, a digital tapestry. Digital tools allow us to visualize these connections. We can create a digital map of the Quran. This map helps us see the network of verses and their relationships. This visualization can be interactive. We can zoom in on specific verses or themes. We can explore the connections in detail. This digital tapestry provides a powerful tool for studying and reflecting on the Quran. Section 7. Pathfinding algorithms, navigating the sea of knowledge. Pathfinding algorithms are like compasses. They help us navigate the vast network of the Quran. These algorithms find the shortest path between two verses based on the connections we've defined. This path reveals a chain of related verses. It allows us to follow a specific theme or idea through the Quran. This method can be invaluable for thematic studies and comparative analysis. Section 8. Respecting tradition, the importance of tafsir. While this new approach offers valuable insights, it's crucial to respect tradition. Tafsir, the traditional Islamic interpretation of the Quran, remains essential. We must use this method as a complement to tafsir, not a replacement. Any findings from network analysis should be validated against traditional interpretations. This ensures our understanding remains grounded in the rich history of Quranic scholarship. Section 9. Ethical considerations, navigating sensitive grounds. Analyzing the Quran through digital routes and networks raises ethical considerations. We must approach this method with sensitivity and respect. We must avoid making far-fetched claims or interpretations. The Quran's meaning is multifaceted and open to different understandings. Our analysis should encourage reflection and thoughtful discussion, not definitive pronouncements. Section 10. A new perspective, challenges and opportunities. This novel approach to understanding the Quran presents both challenges and opportunities. It requires careful consideration and rigorous methodology. However, it also offers a fresh perspective on the Quran's interconnectedness. It can deepen our appreciation for its wisdom and guidance. By embracing both tradition and innovation, we can unlock new levels of understanding within the Quran's timeless message. Pause 3SS, Section 11. Bridging tradition and innovation. As we delve deeper into the intersection of digital root analysis and Quranic scholarship, it becomes essential to balance innovation with tradition. This dual approach can enrich our understanding while respecting the Quran's profound depth. Extended definitions network N. Imagine the Quran as a network where each verse is a node and connections between them are edges. These connections can be either one-way or reciprocal, reflecting the dynamic nature of their relationships. Weight, W. Each connection can have a weight, indicating its thematic, linguistic, or revelational significance. This weight could be determined by factors like frequency of scholarly citation or depth of thematic similarity. Additional axioms, Axiom 7, consistency and connection strength. Every connection, V1, V2, in the network has a weight, W, V1, V2, that quantifies its strength or relevance. This weight can be normalized or ranked. Axiom 8, symmetry of thematic links. Not all connections need to be bidirectional. Some verses might be thematically linked in one direction, creating an asymmetric network structure. Theorems and corollaries. Corollary to Theorem 1. Introducing weights may complicate the combined metric, CM. The formula might need adjustment to include weight, possibly as CM, V1, V2, equal sign DRN V1 plus DOS, V1, V2 plus WVG1, V2. Theorem 3. Pattern recognition. Patterns in digital roots might correspond with thematic clusters or specific surahs, offering a mathematical basis for identifying structural coherence or thematic groupings. Proof of Theorem 3. By examining the distribution of digital roots across verses with similar themes or revelation periods, one could identify patterns or anomalies statistically. Methodology for application digital root mapping. Visualize each verse based on its digital root with connections drawn between them. This could reveal clusters or outliers in the Quranic text. Pathfinding algorithms. Use algorithms like Dijkstra's or A** to find the shortest path between verses, aiding thematic studies or uncovering less obvious connections. Simulation and analysis. Run simulations to see how changes in thematic link importance affect the network's connectivity or combined metrics distribution. Critical considerations. Cultural and scholastic sensitivity. Numerical or connectivity-based analysis must respect Islamic scholarship, as interpretations often carry deep cultural and theological significance. Validation through tafsir. Traditional exegesis, tafsir, should validate or challenge findings from this model, ensuring alignment with theological insights. Ethical use. Avoid reducing the Quran's rich meanings to mere numbers or connections, which might be seen as reductive or sacrilegious by some. This approach marries mathematical theory with religious text, potentially opening new study avenues while ensuring scholarly and community acceptance. It's a fascinating blend of numerology, network theory, and religious studies, inviting us to explore the Quran's timeless wisdom through a contemporary lens.